when you take a look at their cash flow, they were very very lightly down. Oh my gosh, where did it go? I just had it pulled up. Um, yeah, they only ended up doing. Okay, got it. They only lost about 10 billion rubles, otherwise known as, I can't do that in my head. So essentially, when you're thinking about the scale, because it looks like that they are operating at a loss, but it looks like as they continue to scale their operations, and especially if they're growing the GMV by 100% year over year, they have the cash to be able to accomplish this. So it really reduces a lot of the risk of opening a new position on Ozone.
Yeah, and I would just that's a really good point. Thank you for adding that. And I would highlight that the company did guide to break even cash flow for 2021, and that Q1 will be their worst quarter of cash flow performance every single year, because of the seasonality that we kind of hit on earlier in the talk. But that is a very important point. I mean, we're seeing with Jumaya and some of these other Amazon of whatevers, they have no cash, and they're burning through cash. And well, Jemai is kind of remedying that a little bit now, but some of these players are having to dilute shareholders drastically, and with that comes raises the stakes for having to deliver more profitability and more revenue that these companies are struggling to kind of bring to fruition. So the fact that Ozon has all of this firepower and did raise all of this cash from a very successful IPO does give them the opportunity to be more aggressive and even operate in some transactions at a net loss, which they do on some returns, just to create a business that can capture as much market share as they possibly can in while we are in the early innings of Russian e-commerce.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And one thing that you touched on logistics that I found pretty interesting as well. I read an article like a couple of weeks ago. They were trying to compare Ozone to their main competitors, which is like Wildberries or AliExpress or Sberbank or Yandex Market. And as of right now, Wildberries is number one when it comes to the number of fulfillment centers and pretty much logistics in general. But as long as Amazon will keep growing at the same rate as it's growing right now in the next 2 years, I think that was the number and the time frame, they should be able to get even bigger than Wildberries. So I'm very excited about this as well, and I think that they really can achieve this. So that's going to be interesting to see. And
Guys,
yeah, go
For
ahead.
sure.
I have a question, Max and Brad. I think that this is this is going to really help provide a lot of clarification for me. And if you guys have this information, then that's really really helpful. If you don't, then obviously I'll Google it. But I'm thinking to myself, like, as far as the competitive landscape, I remember when I was doing my preliminary research on the company, I noticed that there was a lot of competitors over there in Russia. It's for number one, it's awesome that they're about to be break even capital here this year in 2021. So that really provides a strong competitive differentiator. But as far as their competitors, are they also operating at a net loss? And then also, how does Ozone compare to them?
Yeah, so great question. I'll offer a little color, and I'm sure Max will have more to offer. So, unfortunately, in Russia, the data. So, when I put together my research on it, there were many different data sources saying many different things about market share. So, I guess per Bloomberg, so we're pretty safe to assume that they're kind of sort of close. Ozon was at 6%. AliExpress, which is Alibaba, was at 8%, and they're clearly very profitable, and have a lot of cash to spend. And Wildberries is at 13%. But the important thing to keep in mind is that the projections. So here, let me try and pull up this information. The projections over the next 5 years are that gap closing completely, and Ozon taking a market share lead, and that is because they are spending so aggressively and so crazily, some people think, on market share. So by 2023, they're supposed to get to 16% market share, while Wildberries is flat at 7% from 2018 to 2023. Wildberries is pretty similar to Ozon in terms of I'm pretty sure they're still fully in cash burn mode. But Yandex is another competitor to keep in mind that's also entering the space, and they're very profitable as well. So a lot of deep pocketed competition, vying for this market share. Ozon, so far so good, is really a step ahead of them in terms of capturing market share. But yeah, I think that's where I'll leave that off. Max, anything to offer?
I mean, you pretty much touch all the main areas here, and we don't really have a lot of information. I think as of right now, Yandex is one of the well-known companies that does release those numbers, so we can go there and check. But when it comes to like Wildberries, their main competitor, like it's hard to even to speculate about this because we don't know the actual numbers. I know they've been around for a long time and they're bigger than Ozone right now, so I don't know if they have the capacity to grow at the same rate as Ozone. But I also read an article a couple months ago that Sber, which is pretty much like a chase of Russia, like one of the biggest banks in Russia, are really trying to get into e-commerce area as well because they see this opportunity, like with such low penetration when it comes to e-commerce. So and Sber does have a lot of money to invest, so competition is getting worse, I would say. But based on what I've seen so far, based on the management that Ozone has, based on the amount of capital, like Dylan mentioned, that I think Ozone just gonna keep getting more and more and more when it comes to the share of the entire market. And so it seems like Ozone is starting to get into the international market as well, which means it used to be operating in Russia only. Now they are planning to expand to Belarus, and I personally believe it's probably step number one. We're gonna see more and more expansion in the future, but we'll see how it goes. I don't want to make any predictions at this point.
Yeah, and maybe maybe a good time to transition over into new initiatives and verticals. I know a lot of people are listening to this on their lunch break, including you, Max. So we don't want to keep them too long. But the Ozone card specifically is really it's thriving. I don't use that word very lightly, but it is absolutely thriving. Quarter over quarter growth exceeded 70%. They're at 780,000 cards now. Encouragingly, those as more and more people download the card, they're maintaining this metric that that card holders order 1.6 times more frequently than non-card holders. So so everything looks good there. They also acquired Oni Bank. They if you Google Oni Bank, it's not going to look very impressive. It's not doesn't look like a great organization, I'm positive Ozone knows that. So I kind of compare this to SoFi buying that very small community bank in California to gain licensing and to be able to operate in new ways. And this was Ozone's way of acquiring banking licenses and acquiring the basically gaining the ability to operate as a digital bank in Russia. So they acquire these assets that they're going to integrate into their own marketplace system. But Oni Bank itself, there's really nothing to get excited about. They just bought it for the licenses that they have.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you gotta start from somewhere, right? So let's start with these small community banks, and then we're gonna keep expanding more and more and more. Um, I think one thing that I would like to touch as well, real quick, on Ozone Express, and actually, to all the listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. And then maybe in about 5-10 minutes, once we're done, if any of the listeners have any questions, you can just request to speak, and I will gladly answer, or Brad or Dylan. And if we can find this information, we'll post it later. But if any of you guys have any questions, just let us know, please. So when it comes to Ozone Express, it's their like 1 day delivery. I think at this point it's only available in large markets like Moscow and St. Petersburg. And so when it comes to the developments in Q1 of 2021, Ozone Express continued to expand its operations, gain popularity thanks to a large and diverse assortment of an expedited delivery, In March this year, the average daily order volume more than doubled compared to December 2020, and the number of orders in Q1 2021 was 10 times higher compared to Q1 2020. Just fantastic growth, in my opinion. And so when it comes to expansion, I touched on this. Brad, do you want to talk a little bit about their expansion outside of Russia?
Sure. I'll just, I mean, pretty simple. They are expanding into Belarus. They were noticing that there was a lot of demand from that population, so they wanted to create an infrastructure footprint in that country. The population is about 9 million, and like Max said a few minutes ago, this seems like step one into their Eastern European expansion. Ukraine, all of those places, I think, are definitely in play. Despite Max was educating me on some geopolitical tensions that are currently happening, but for the long term, I think that is in play for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think Ukraine would be an amazing market for Ozone, based on the amount of people. They have a perfect demographic there. I was personally born and raised in Ukraine as well, and I have a lot of friends who have businesses there. They would greatly benefit from this type of service that Ozone provides, especially doing business between Russian and Ukrainian clients. But unfortunately, this Russia/Ukraine conflict, it's been going on for the past 5 or 7 years. I personally don't see any expansion in that market anytime soon, but who knows what's going to happen. And if it does happen, it's going to be a big plus for Ozone. So, what else do we have, Brad, to touch? Anything else you would like to add before we may turn into Q&A?
I think that was it. One quote from Alexander Shulgin from the Q&A that I thought pretty telling of the momentum they're seeing, and I need to pull it up. Of course, I said I have a quote, and now I don't have it, but 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Since the pandemic restrictions have eased, our order frequency has risen further. So this just it meshes well with the GMV guidance raise, and it's just it's going against the grain that their growth is accelerating as things are going back to normal. And because Russia still has just a 9% e-commerce penetration rate, which is half of the United Kingdom, a little more than half the United States, and a little more than a third of China, there's a really long runway, and there's a lot of reason to think that growth can be more sustainable here than some of the other mature markets that are entering decade 2 or 3 of e-commerce. Exciting times to be in Ozone. I think the lockup expiration is coming soon. That always serves as a fun time for me to get good companies on sale. So hopefully people will use that as a reason to sell it off. I know that sounds kind of weird to some people, but I do love accumulating my favorite companies and do like doing that into weakness. So as long as the company is doing well and this company is firing on all cylinders, and that's another quote from the CEO, I'll continue to add no matter what the stock does. And that's definitely what's happening here.
Dylan, do you have anything to add?
No, sir. I know that I think that just talking about the market as a whole when it comes down to e-commerce, I think that some people they often hear me say the word secular growth trend often. The reason why you would always want to have exposure to any sort of e-commerce, specifically in different demographics. So you got C over there in Southeast Asia, then you got Alibaba out of China, you got Amazon here. Etsy is going to be another popular one here in the United States as well. But you got Ozon, and you think about Ozon's market, and the expansion over to Belarus is very interesting to me, because then this is telling us that they do have the opportunity to expand into a lot of those Eastern European countries. So not just Russia, but can expand down into the. All right, I think I accidentally just got a call. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yep,
we can
can
hear
hear
you.
you.
Okay. But yeah, all that is very interesting to me. I don't currently own a position in Ozon. I have to do a little bit more due diligence here. I'm pretty leveraged up in my portfolio, so I gotta pick and choose who I end up adding and who I end up dropping. So otherwise, very interesting company.
Yeah, 100% agree with everything that Dylan and Brad just said. And for me personally, even though the company's been around since late 90s, I think the most interesting in all the excitement about the development and investment of this company took place in the past year. Of course, it's been boosted by the global pandemic, and it was already moving that direction, but just all these lockdowns just accelerated the development and increase in market penetration when it comes to e-commerce. So it's a perfect time to be investing in something like this, and the company is just getting started. We just saw their second earnings report as a publicly traded company, and it would be nice to see how the company operated maybe 5-7 years ago. So we don't have a lot of data to compare it with, but based on what I've seen for the past 6 months, yeah, I remain extremely optimistic and bullish. And the company is not trading that expensive on multiples compared to its competitors, which is another good plus. And I think it has a market cap around $10 billion, which is not that big. So another thing that I'm excited about as well is that it's not only pure play e-commerce. So the company is just trying to expand into other areas as well, like Brett mentioned, fintech services with the bank acquisition or offering OZON credit cards. I think they have a similar service to like Amazon Prime does. They have I don't remember the exact name of it, but they have a similar offering to Russian clients as well. So they're doing all the right things, and I'm really excited to keep watching all the developments, and the company is making the right acquisitions, expanding into different markets. So it's really a lot of things to look forward to. Uh, do we have any questions from any of the listeners? You can just request to talk, and we'll do our best to answer. Okay, I see Rocky just requested, so let me just go ahead and add him as a speaker. It
Hey
shows
Max.
connect. It
Max.
shows connecting to on my side. Okay, I
Hey,
can hear you now.
hey
What's up,
Max.
man?
Hey Brad. How are you guys?
Good. How are you, man?
Good.
Good.
Good. I'm good. Thanks for doing this, man. I don't know much about the Russian e-commerce market, but I just want to check. I think, yeah, you guys said that the Wildberries is the number one player. And did you mention what percentage of market they currently have in the Russia?
Yeah. So Wild Berries is the largest pure play player. Sorry for saying that so many times. They're at 7%, and that is supposed to be flat through 2023. There are other competitors that I'm looking through my notes right now. So I'll get back to you in 1 second on that.
And so Brad, you said it's 7%, and I was just so Ozone did 1 billion in GMV. Is that correct? Around 1 billion?
Yep.
$1 billion, yes.
Dollars, yeah. And I'm just
Mhm.
looking at some reports online, and I can see Wildberries 2019 revenue at $3.5 billion. 2019, okay, there is no 2020 data I can find. Uh, so that seems way more than 7% compared if I compare 1 billion versus 3.5 billion.
Yep. So I'm sure that there are other revenue streams mixed into that. Wildberries does a lot of things, but according to Statista and according to Bloomberg, the data I'm looking at right now, Ozon is at 12% as of 2020, and Wildberries is still at 7%. So I'll have to look more into that, but that is what the data I look at is telling me.
Okay,
So
okay.
Rocky, if I'm not mistaken, too, I think Wildberries has a little bit different of a business model than Ozone. This is research I did quite a few months ago, but I remember I actually dismissed wild berries because I looked at it and I'm like, it doesn't really seem like that they're actually trying to penetrate the same market. But to put it into perspective, it looks like wild berries is doing about $4.7 billion, where Ozon did that $1.1 billion. So, and then they actually have another competitor too called MVideo. So it looks like that it's a highly fragmented market, but I think that Max or Brad ended up saying it, that I think there's like a 5% penetration. So it's kind of like, for example, like when you think about the e-commerce market as a whole, you have to think about like America, because Etsy is considered e-commerce, Shopify is considered e-commerce, and so is Amazon. But they all serve distinct competitive niches. And much like Southeast Asia as well, like Sea is different, but like Sea and Alibaba are direct competitors. But I think it's Grab is also considered e-commerce as well. But they are not direct competitors. So that's the best way to think about these things.
Okay, I have to maybe
Yeah.
read about Wildberries more. I don't know about the company much, but I will look. Thanks, Ellen.
And then just to add one more thing. So this is e-commerce DB top online stores. So that's what it's called specifically. It has Wildberries at 17% and Ozon at 5%. That's as of 2018. And then the what I'm looking at is referred to as internet retail. So I those two things sound very similar to me, but apparently they're different. So I'll have to dig in more there. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, man, thanks for the question. And even though Wildberries is probably, it is actually bigger and it probably generates more revenues, but we gotta take things into consideration, like even brand awareness among all the Russians. And based on the last number that I've seen, Ozon was the market leader by a mile when it comes to brand awareness. And historically, a lot of the people that I know personally from Russia, maybe like 5 years ago, a lot of them been using AliExpress or MVideo, like Dylan mentioned, or Wildberries, or maybe even Yandex Market. But in the last 3 years, a lot of them been transitioning from the competitors to Ozone, and for their personal needs or for their business needs. And based on what I hear, no one is thinking about switching back
So
ever.
Max, if I'm not wrong, you have Russian origin, right? And you're getting this from your friends and family, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Ukraine and
Uh,
grew up like 50 miles away from a Russian border. So I speak Russian, yeah. But I
okay.
have a lot of friends in Russia, in Moscow and St. Petersburg, two of the biggest cities there. And based on their personal experience, I can tell that Ozone has been doing all the right things in the past, ever since they went public.
Cool.
And I remember even listening to this podcast around Christmas time. Like they've been bombarded with orders around holidays and commercials all over the place. And at some point, they have to stop making any advertisements at all because it was so hard to deal with the volume. So it tells you right there that the company is doing something right.
And Max, do they? Some of the articles suggest that the ozons isn't cross-border commerce also, and Russian in US, UK tend to order from Ozone. Is that correct? Do they ship international?
Uh,
I do not believe so. I think that's more of an AliExpress thing at this point in time. I don't they don't have any revenues reported from North America.
yeah,
Okay, thank
I
you.
haven't seen any information either, but I may try to to make an order and see if it's going to be delivered to the United States just for fun and see if it's going to go through or no.
Good, good. Cheers.
Yeah, and I have a better answer to your original question. So Wildberries has a 17% share of buying and selling things online in Russia. Wildberries has a 7% share of internet retail, so that includes advertising dollars, that includes gaming dollars, that includes everything you can imagine. And there is where Ozon has the 9% share for 2018, 12% share for 2020, rising to 16% by 2023. And there they are really competing head to head with Yandex and Beirut. And those are probably going to be the one and two players there. Yandex is kind of Google and of Russia, and they're doing a lot more things now. So just so you know.
Cool. Thanks, Brett. That's useful. Cheers.
Yeah, and you have to take into consideration, Rocket, that all this information that we have about Wildberries, I don't know how much we can rely on this, honestly, because it's not a publicly traded company, even though there are some talks that they may go public at some point in the future. I don't know if it's true or not, but we'll see how it goes.
I understand.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other questions from any of the listeners? You can just click a request and we'll do our best to answer. I'm scrolling through all the people that join, and I see a lot of OZON fans in here. So if you'd like to ask a question, feel free.
Yeah, I guess just filling the time. If people are hearing about OZON for the first time, probably good to keep in mind that one of their largest owners is Sistema, which is a private equity firm in Russia. And I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, Max. I apologize in advance, but Vladimir Evtushkinov, he owns the majority of Sistema, and he is included on a list of 96 oligarchs kept by the U.S. federal government. So this means that OZON is in by all accounts connected to the Russian government. For some people, that could be a reason to shy away. For me, it was honestly a reason to become more encouraged. Russia's kind of, I don't want to say free for all, but Russia is more I'll just say less geopolitically stable than maybe the United States or England or a lot of these places. So by having this oligarch connected to the government, it honestly gives me more confidence, as weird as that sounds, that they will continue to be in the good graces of a government that can kind of decide which companies they like and which companies they don't like on the drop of a dime. So another thing to consider if you are interested in the company.
Yeah, that's a very good point. In countries like Russia, things like this you have to really take into consideration. I have one person asked to be added as a speaker, so let me just go ahead and add. Hello, can you hear us? It doesn't show the name, so I don't even know how to pronounce it. But
I think it's Bull.
with the car.
Can you hear us, Bull? Or go ahead and.
Hey guys, yeah, sorry, I can hear you, and thanks for giving this opportunity. Yeah, I changed my. I'm actually originally from India, so I changed my name with a little bit of Indian letters in there just to avoid any scammers to pick up and imitate the profile. So just thought that would help stop any scammers from doing it. So sorry that the full name is not visible. But anyways, Brad, excellent coverage, and all the speakers, excellent coverage on Ozone. I listened in for past say 5 minutes or so. So maybe I've missed this, but my question was, after this current earnings, what is the greatest risks that you guys see for the year on Ozone? And if you have answered this already, my apologies again.
Yeah, so for me, and this was not covered, and cool name. Thank you for the explanation. Very cool. So the biggest risk for me is that this company accelerated greatly and pulled forward a ton of demand because of COVID-19, because of the pandemic, and like our Teledocs and like our Pelotons and all these other names, there's worry that some of this growth that was pulled forward will lead to the next couple of years being a little bit underwhelming. And them guiding to 100% GMV growth versus 90% that they had guided to in the previous quarter kind of eases those concerns for me. So that's one. And the other thing that we always have to keep in mind is we are investing in a company that operates in Russia, and that and there's a lot of geopolitical tension that comes with that. So I'm in it, and I understand that risk, and some people might not be able to tolerate that risk, and that is extremely understandable.
Yeah, Brad, and I'll piggyback off that a little bit here. I think that given the cash position of Ozon, as well as them being cash flow positive, as well as showing a clear competitive advantage through their numbers and growing at an exponential rate, you can't help but assume that as long as things continue to go in the direction that they're currently going in, that this would be considered. There's no such thing as a no risk stock, right? But it seems to be extraordinarily promising, even though it's losing money, much like how C Limited is. You can't help but believe in the company in a long-term point of view. But when it comes down to the location and the geopolitical tensions that are going on between Ukraine and Russia, this could disrupt business operations in the long run, as well as like a currency and exchange rate risk as well. So I know that there's a lot of investors that exclusively only invest into American companies just for that reason, like the stability reason. Even though that hasn't really seemed to be the case lately, but that's essentially the biggest risk that I see is the currency and the political state.
Thank you
Yeah,
both. And
another thing that we have to take into consideration, of course, is their competition. Like Brad mentioned, that these competitors have very deep pockets, and even though Ozon has close to $2 billion in cash, some of these competitors probably even have more money than they do. But it's definitely one of the risks that we need to take into consideration. And but based on the track record of the management that I see, they have a very strong team. Half of the team in Ozone is right now from Yandex and have like decades of experience, and half of them from like Goldman Sachs have a great experience as well. So they have an amazing team in place right now that are capable of executing, as you guys can see, 6 consecutive quarters of triple digit. Sounds pretty impressive to me.
Yeah, and one more thing I will add, and this is the last thing I actually have to add. I promise there's I'm saying a lot, sorry. But in terms of these deep-pocketed competitors and Ozon continue having to spend a lot on infrastructure and logistics and their courier network, they are raising debt at 1.8% interest due in 2026. So they are getting the benefit of the doubt from creditors. They are getting rates that we see AAA balance sheet tech companies in the United States collect or securing debt for. So they have a lot of cash on hand, and they have a lot of flexibility in the bond market as well. Yeah.
perfect. Thank you. And I have one more question. Actually, this is a two-part question. So
Yeah, go ahead.
if I have to trust Coifin numbers here, and I know Coifin messes up sometimes with the international listed companies here in the US, but if I have to trust their numbers, I'm seeing an enterprise value to sales next 12 months after this earnings, well, not including this earnings, is 4.3, which is very attractive because Amazon is 3.3 here, and SE and Melly and all of them are over 10. It makes it extremely, good opportunity to further build positions into. But I'm always a little bit doubtful as to where I can find reliable source and information to do some background check on the company, like market position, total proper number of shares outstanding, just getting market sentiments and reading about these things. So where do you guys look for? What is your go-to site or maybe something to check background on international companies?
Yeah. Coifin stinks. Yahoo Finance stinks unless you're dealing with companies that are covered by 20 or 30 or 40 analysts. And I love Coifin. Coifin is an incredible service, but its estimates are not super reliable for this. You unfortunately, you have to go into the SEC filings that they are publishing and kind of control find outstanding shares or diluted share count, and that'll help you collect the total share count, and then you can just multiply that by share price to get their market cap and add in any debt or cash to get enterprise value. That's how I would do it. Unfortunately, the data sources that make this so easy on us are not super reliable for brand new public companies with not a ton of coverage.
Yeah,
Thank you.
a good point. And for example, when I first was looking into Ozone S1 filing, like I got a lot of information there when it comes to the entire market as well. When I was going through Yandex earnings report, they also touched a lot about e-commerce industry there as well. So if you can just go over S1 filings or just 10Q or quarter filings for publicly traded companies, you can get a lot of information there as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks
you.
for your question. I think Maxwell wanted to ask a question as well. What's up, man?
Hey guys. I love the spaces. I really enjoy listening while I work and while you guys do this. So I guess I had really two questions. So GMV as a percentage of market share has increased drastically. You do not normally see a company go from 30% to almost 60% year over year. Maybe some further comments on that. How is that? How are they going about doing that? So where I'm coming from is I think about SIA. SIA is making very little off of their third-party marketplace, right? They're trying to get buyer and seller volumes up, and as they scale buyer and seller volumes up, they'll hypothetically increase their take rate. So I was curious what you thought about take rate in general. Their take rate as a percentage of GMV, revenues to GMV, is like 50%, which is really solid. And the company just appears, I mean, to be firing on all cylinders in terms of taking market share. And it was my understanding when they IPO'd that there was a larger competitor. And so it seems like OZON is now the largest e-commerce player in Russia. Maybe some comments on that.
Yeah, so this also got me when I was reading the F1 originally. So it's worded really poorly, and it's really misleading. It's somewhat misleading. So it says share of marketplace reached 58.4% as a percentage of GMV. So they're not saying that Russian GMV is now 58% OZON. They're saying their business is now 58% marketplace. So that I think that answers that question. And the other thing,
oh yeah, that's very helpful.
No, for sure. And that I made the exact same mistake twice, actually. So the other thing to keep in mind is they did say on the call that they lowered their commission rates this quarter. They didn't say exactly what they lowered them to, but they said that led to an influx of sellers. And they talked about continuing to lower these commission rates over time. And with gross profit margin going from 23 to 34%, I think it's clear that they do have a lot of room to lower these take rates and to make each transaction a little less profitable from an input cost standpoint. So yeah, I think a lot of room to go there, which is exciting. That also feeds into the Amazon of whatever. I think they have room to undercut a lot of people and do it profitably.
Great, that's super helpful.
Yeah, I really have nothing to add. Brad is doing a great job answering all these questions. So thank you so much, Brad. And if this spaces would have this option to tip, I would definitely tip. It's unbelievable amount of information I'm getting from you. But when it comes to the exact reasons why they almost doubled this share from 30% to almost 60%, what they said is all because of as a result of the rise in order frequencies, the rapid growth in the number of active customers, which reached 16 million, and assortment expansion. I think OZON right now has the largest assortment of goods when it comes to all of their competitors as well. So that definitely played a big role here as well.
Great. The other thing that's on my mind is European expansion. So they announced that they're expanding into, what was it? It's not a territory
Belarus.
of Russia. Yeah. Right. So that's Europe, right? This isn't Russia. This is Europe. So
Correct.
maybe something more on that. I mean, is this company looking to expand into Eastern Europe only, or possibly all of Europe?
I think Eastern Europe's probably a lot more feasible at this point in time. I don't know how. I don't really see a near-term path, at least, where they're operating in Germany or UK or countries like that in Western Europe. But Eastern Europe, I think that they can be a player in several countries, and they're trying to in Belarus now, like you said. Max, anything to add?
I can just tell you that I was really caught off guard when I saw this article last week with this expansion, because I was just personally thinking they're gonna keep increasing their share in Russia, and then here we go. Now we're expanding to Belarus as well, so that was pretty interesting. Yeah, pretty much every country that used to be part of Soviet Union back in the days is probably the best area as of right now to expand, other than Ukraine, probably, like we mentioned before, just because of all these tensions between the two countries. But Eastern Europe is just to begin with. But then who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 to 7 years? We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we're a quarter removed from them saying we are entirely focused on Russia and we're going to operate in Russia. So this company is moving. It's exciting. I mean, this company is moving very quickly. I was equally caught off guard when they announced that expansion into Belarus, and it's not so much the opportunity that Belarus provides because again, it's just 9 million people and change, but it's the fact that they are looking to expand into Eastern Europe this quickly. I'm also surprised.
Hey,
Yeah,
Brett.
that was my sentiment as well. Sorry.
Sorry. Hey, Brett, Max. I was just looking at your comment about the reducing the take rate, and I found some information. I'll read out for everybody's benefit here. So it looks like they changed the take rate from 1st of February. And I'll read out a couple of categories. So furniture used to be 17% before 1st of February and is now 8% from 1st of February. Clothing, shoes, and accessories was 15% and went down to 5%. So if you just look at these two categories, and there are a bunch of these categories where I think the take rate is almost reduced by like 50% or even more than that, right? So it's a drastic reduction in the take rate, and maybe that is fueling some of the marketplace growth at the moment.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to go back to listener.
Thanks for the question. I really appreciate it. I think Brad is a listener right now. I don't know why. So let me go ahead and add him as a speaker again. I think Bill had a question as well. Bill Madden, what's going on, man?
Yeah, hi there, Max. Thank you so much once again for this space. I mean, it's just tremendous the information you get. I just wanted to say, speaking about expansion, 3 months ago, Wild Berries launched into 4 European markets, into France, Italy, Spain, and Germany, or I guess that's 5, but 4 major ones. They're also in Poland, they're in Slovakia, they're in Israel, they're in Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and the Ukraine. So they're being super aggressive. I mean, they're even in the US supposedly. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but they're being super aggressive. And I was wondering if either you or Dylan or Brad could comment on that.
Yeah, so I'm of the opinion that in your core market you focus there first and you dominate and then you move on. And the fact that OZON is outpacing a larger Wild Berries on brand awareness by double-digit percentage points, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but you can control F that in the F1 is just showing that I think that OZON is building a better base in Russia than Wild Berries is, and that's why all these projections are forecasting that the market share lead is going to erode. And I really think that establishing your core market and doing a fantastic job before that you focus on all these other countries and Wild Berries and OZON are pretty. I think OZON's like 17 years old, so they're not really young companies. And I do favor that. So I don't that's actually news to me that Wild Berries is in those 4 Western European countries. So thank you for that piece of information. That makes me a little more encouraged that maybe they can pull that off eventually. But I really do think that Eastern Europe is now in play, and now that they've built this break-even hyper growth top of mind brand awareness company in Russia, then they can use that as their base to continue expanding more successfully, in my opinion, in my biased opinion.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, when it comes to brand awareness for OZON, it was like 35% or something like this. And the next competitor, which was Wild Berries, it was like top like 18 or 19%. So it was like almost half of that number. So just like Brad mentioned, I think they've been doing an amazing job. And then if they're going to take a page from Wild Berries' book as well, which was bigger, and expand to other areas, I see why not. Like they may have some difficulties at the beginning, but based on the management's track record and execution, I think that at some point they can achieve that.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it.
So guys, I'm taking a look here at Wild Berries, and I'm also taking a look at OZON here. And I think stumbling upon what I ended up coming across before when I was doing my initial research on OZON. And it looks like that they are two different business models. So they are operating in the e-commerce space, but it really does seem like that OZON is going to be a lot more Amazon-like, where Wildberries is going to be a lot more of the fashion and I don't know if vanity is the right word to use, but they basically distribute other brand names for like shoes and accessories and like uh, all that other stuff, beauty and sports apparel. So they're partnered with like Calvin Klein, Puma. Those are two big American brands like Tommy Hilfiger as well. Where Ozon is kind of like the day-to-day knickknacks that you would go on Amazon for, like where my where my fiance has like a list of about 15 different items that she wants for our house, kind of thing. So that's what I'm seeing here is that so you can have two different e-commerce players in the same space. So I want to make sure to emphasize that when you are thinking about two competitors in any given space, you got to understand exactly what the competitive difference is between two of those because they could appeal to a completely different market. So like one person could use Ozon for one thing and then Wildberries for another. So I just wanted to provide context and color around that.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that the market in Russia is large enough for multiple players. I mean, it's the same conversation that we see a lot of, well, like, can C Limited and Mercado Libre be successful in Latin America? I think, yes, they can, because the area is so big. So can be multiple winners. So
yeah, and I mean, just the runway of e-commerce penetration in Russia, and I've mentioned this before, but internet penetration is well over 80%, and e-commerce penetration is at 9%. That jumped from 6% from the pandemic, but it's still well below developed nations, and I still think that is going to be a tide that lifts all boats, even though I think Ozon is going to be better at capitalizing on that tide.
Yeah, and I personally think that competition is great. Like, if they would not have competition, they may not have the motivation to keep growing and aggressively expand and kick ass. So, and I think that when it comes to competition, there's definitely no shortage of this, and I think that's why Ozone is just, like you guys mentioned this 500 times during this call, like, keep firing all cylinders, and it's the growth is not going to slow down anytime soon. They keep raising the guidance. So I think we're going to keep seeing the same amount of growth and maybe some possible expansion or merger and acquisition activity as well in the future. We'll see how it goes. Let me see if we have any other questions. I think we're already right in an hour, so I'm not sure how much time you guys have, Dylan or Brad. So originally we're trying to get for like 45-minute spaces. We're already at 1 hour. So, and my lunch break is getting to an end. So I think I personally have to go.
Yeah, same thing. I got to go do some writing, but DMs are always open. So if we missed anything, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, ask any questions, and I'm probably gonna write a thread or something to summarize all of our conversations, earnings call, all the Q&A session after the earnings release, and maybe try to answer some of these questions that you guys asked on the spaces today. So thank you so much for all the speakers. Dylan, Brett, always a pleasure to learn from you. Thanks for all the listeners for joining us, and we have a similar spaces tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern time, which is 4 hours from right now, when we'll be talking about C Limited. So I'm really looking forward to this, and hopefully see all you guys later. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Max.
Yeah, see you guys.